Good morning, everybody. Welcome, greetings from quite a pleasant Cape Town morning. It feels like it's been ages since I sat in front of this camera, and it probably has been. Well, I have an opportunity this morning. The plant is switched off, so everything is quiet downstairs, and I thought let's put the time to good use so we can get back onto the story of the Jameson raid, which seems to be taking forever to recount. Anyway, let's not waste any further time. I think we can just dispense with any other formalities at this point and just get straight into it, shall we? Well, the meeting proceeded in a rather cordial fashion until it got to the question of education for the Uitlander children. And of course the Johannesburg delegation wanted lessons given in English, or some lessons, or English taught. And here President Kruger was not going to budge. Uncle Paul dug his heels in and he told me in no uncertain terms, gentlemen, English is a silver tongue, and it's not going to be taught in our schools. The next thing, our children will start wanting other English things and other British things, and I'm not opening the door to that, or words to that effect, you know what I mean. So they weren't able to probe this thing any deeper, because it seemed to be at that point there was an interruption. And this must have been occasioned by Piet Joubert walking in with this telegram from Zurich in his hand. And so matters were hurriedly adjourned. The Johannesburg delegation were asked if they wouldn't mind coming back at 2 o'clock at afternoon so that the president could see what was going on here. And he and Joubert discussed this. And of course it left them with a very big problem. This was something totally unexpected. Although, as I said in the last episode, it seems that Joubert, he was the Commandant General, the top man as far as security of this state goes. He had some misgivings. Something troubled him about the situation on the frontier. And as it turned out, he was right. Jameson was there with armed men, and he had crossed the frontier, and he was now presumably heading straight for Johannesburg, where they knew there was trouble. Well, I mean, everybody knew that. And where else would he be going? The problem is, despite all the talk that we hear, particularly today, about the Transvaal being a sovereign state on friendly terms with Britain and all the rest of it, yes, that is true. We understand all that. I accept all that. But the thing is, Britain and the Transvaal coexisted under the terms of an agreement, a treaty, if you like. And the nature of the thing was such that Britain was the paramount power in this relationship. So it wouldn't do for Kruger and Joubert just to recklessly steam into Jameson and his men, with the argument that this is our country and we are a sovereign state, and who are you to come in here on an armed excursion? No, they had to find out first of all, what was Britain's viewpoint of this, and were they involved, and to what extent, and what was the problem? And I mean, these things, the political side of it was very important, and that had to be settled before any military action could be considered. And so what they had to do was get hold of the British agent for the Transvaal, a Sir Jacobus de Wet. It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? Sir Jacobus de Wet. Yeah, he was the go-between, if you like, between the state, the Transvaal state, and the Colonial Office. So he was hurriedly summoned. But he had just sent a telegram off to Sir Hercules Robinson down in the Cape. Now, he was the High Commissioner. And De Wet said to him, "Sir, there's something going on here in Johannesburg. There are rumors afoot that the Boers are arming themselves, and bands of riders have been seen circulating Johannesburg, and you know, I'm quite worried about this. Do you think, Sir Hercules, that I should go and see President Kruger and ask him if he's aware of all this, and what measures has he put in place to protect the Uitlanders in Joburg?" But before any reply could be received, or before anybody could do anything, De Wet gets a summons. "Please come and see me. The president wants to see him urgently." So he goes there, and Joubert hands him this telegram from Zurich, telling of this excursion that has just passed through Otto's Hoop. And De Wet is excuse me, I'm just recovering from a bit of a cold. De Wet is taken aback. He doesn't know what to say. And he says the most ridiculous thing by way of response. He says, "I can't believe that these are Englishmen." Well, that was no satisfactory answer. That didn't explain anything. And Joubert correctly guesses, and he says, "I'm telling you, these are either men from Mashonaland, from the Mashonaland Mounted Police, or they're from the Bechuanaland Border Police. But wherever they come from," he said, "I will deal with them." So De Wet has to excuse himself and go and try and get hold of Robertson and find out, what does he know about this? What is going on? And so they give him leave to go and do that. Robinson looks at this message when it comes through to him, and he doesn't know what's going on either. He's completely taken aback. But the first thing he needs to do is find out, hey, how true is this? All we know is this comes from Kruger. Maybe Kruger's got the wrong end of the stick over here, and he's just being alarmist. So first of all, Robinson, quite rightly, I think, tries to get confirmation. And so he sends a telegram up to Mafeking. And he wants to hear there from the Protectorate Commissioner, which is a Mr. Francis Newton, what is going on? Do you know anything about this? Has a force crossed the border and gone into the Transvaal? And then the confirmation comes back. Once the line has been repaired, remember, Jameson had the lines cut. But the first message that comes through is a reply from Newton, and he says, yeah, I'm afraid to tell you that is the truth. He's gone in. So now the next thing Robinson wants to know before he starts saying anything to Kruger is, what has Cecil John Rhodes got to say about this? But now Rhodes has heard the news, and it has rather surprised him as well, because just a few days before that he had said to somebody, there's nothing going to come of this so-called uprising in Johannesburg. He says, my assessment is it's not going to happen. And then he uses words which almost seems out of place at that time. He says, it appears to be nothing but a damp squib. Now, I thought that was a sort of well, I won't say a modern expression, but an expression, you know, much later than 1895. But no, that's what he said. This appears to be nothing but a damp squib. You can forget about it. Now suddenly he hears, it's not a damp squib. Jameson has taken action, and he's marched into the Transvaal. Now he knows, Rhodes knows, they're going to put pressure on him over this, and if he now puts pressure on Jameson, well, that was unthinkable, because in the first place, Jameson must probably know something he doesn't, and secondly, Jameson may still succeed in whatever objective he has in his mind. So Jameson, as far as Rhodes is concerned, needs a bit of time. And Rhodes is not going to interfere with that. So he absents himself from his office, his official office in Cape Town, keeps away from the club where he would normally be found if he wasn't in the office, and he saddles up a horse and goes riding on the slopes of Rondebosch, Table Mountain, above his estate, where nobody can get hold of him. And this is to the frustration of the High Commissioner. Robinson cannot get hold of Rhodes to find out what's going on. And so time goes by, you see. So the president calls for De Wet again. And he says, Sir Jacobus, what's cooking, man? What's going on? Have you got an answer for me? What is the position of the British Crown on this invasion? And De Wet is beside himself. He's making excuses. And he's so frustrated. He goes and sends another telegram. And he says to Sir Hercules, please, you've got to give me an answer, man. I've got to go back to this man. For all I know, blood has been shed already. They're not telling me the whole story. And I'm in the middle, and you're not saying anything, and I don't know what's going on, and I'm expected to give answers. So please help me out here. Well, of course, he says this in nice words, you know, not quite as in the way that I've said it. But the meaning is perfectly clear. The frustration comes through. And so he gets a reply. Your agitated telegram has been received. But they still don't give him an answer. Robinson then tells Francis Newton up in Mafeking, get a guy on a fast horse and send him after Jameson. And tell him he's got to turn around and come back immediately. So please get onto that straight away. Now that's the best he can do, since he can't get hold of Rhodes. And this is where the matter lies. 2 o'clock, the Johannesburg delegation are back there in high spirits. They don't know anything about the drama that's going on in the background. Nobody really knows at that time. So they walk into the meeting, and there is the president. He's sitting like this with his hand across his face. He's a troubled man, and well he would be. So would I be, so would you be if we were in his position. I can understand that. He's sitting there, and all they can see is this smashed up thumb of his. Remember I told you he injured himself quite badly when he was a younger man, when a firearm exploded in his hand. So he's sitting there with his deformed hand covering half of his face. And he's not listening to what's going on. And they are saying, well, you know, there's the food, the levies on the food are very, very high. And, you know, we'd like this reduced to, you know, say about this and this. Yeah, fine. What else? Well, thank you, Mr. President. And, you know, there's also this other thing. Yeah, okay, what else? And he's just giving away concession after concession to these people. And they can't believe it. And eventually the meeting's over. They stand up there. They think, man, we've got almost everything that we asked for today. And they say goodbye. They go downstairs in high spirits. Why? There's been you know, something's changed. You know, it's like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And there they bump into a man by the name of Judge Kotza. Now, he's quite an interesting character in his own right, but I'm not going to get involved with him too much, okay? And he says to them, hey, gentlemen, have you heard the news? Jameson has crossed the border with plenty of Maxims and he's marching on Johannesburg. What? Yeah. Now, this is not really good news at all, because, you know, what's going to happen now? The Boers are seemingly, the perception is, they are agitating for a fight and looking for an excuse. And Jameson has just dropped this right in their lap. What's to stop these people just storming into Johannesburg now and shooting off left, right and center? There could be bloodshed before the night begins. So, you know, that was something which was very disturbing to hear. And of course, the news spreads like wildfire throughout the city. And people start packing their belongings. They got to get out of here. We got to be out of this place before Jameson arrives here, because there's going to be a big war taking place right here in the streets of Joburg, and we don't want to be here. And some of the first creatures that are taken away and led out of Joburg are the racehorses that entertained the population at an annual race meeting just a few days prior to that. And so, you know, the racehorse owners were saying, I'm not going to have the Boers confiscate my horses, and, you know, this horse is worth a lot of money to me. I can't just think of a farmer chucking an old saddle on it and, you know, wandering around his farm with this. This horse is worth more to me than that. So the horses were the first to go out. And yeah, there was a very sad incident of a train that was overloaded with people. It left Joburg, Johannesburg station, and I'm afraid it overturned on a bend, and many people died and were killed as a result of that. So it's quite sad and ironical, really, that the very thing that Jameson feared, and this is this telegram that he had in his pocket from Reuters that said men, women and children are fleeing out of Joburg, that came to pass in reality as a result of him crossing the border. But it wasn't the case when he invaded the Transvaal. So that was a sad twist of fate, really. But let's just leave Johannesburg for the moment. What was happening out there on the veld with Jameson? About mid-morning, after Jameson and the column had left Otto's Hoop, they began to see small bands of Boers riding on either flank and to their rear, but keeping well out of rifle range, and obviously keeping their eyes on proceedings and trailing them. It was assumed that the information was be passed back to Pretoria, and indeed it was, via telegraph. So Commandant Dubé, back in Pretoria, was fully aware of the progress that Jameson was making. About midday, a rider approaches the column. Now, you know, throughout the story of the Jameson raid, every now and then we come across unidentified, unknown, unnamed Boer individuals who have to play a role in the saga. And here we have a man on horseback sent by his commandant with a letter to give to Jameson. And very little is known of these people. We hear nothing of them. They're just characters who come into the story and go out of it again. But I think we should bear in mind the courage and the bravery that they displayed. I mean, here is an individual, he's given an order, and he agrees to do it, and he's approaching an enemy column which is probably in strength what you would call a battalion-sized unit. Now he could get shot at as he approaches them. He could be arrested if he wasn't shot at and killed. But the chances were there that he could actually lose his life in doing this. But he goes ahead and he does his work, and we should remember the bravery and the courage of these men. And there are other individuals like him who pop up from time to time as we relate this story. So it's a letter from none other than Louis Botha. And he says to him, "Sir, what you are doing is illegal, and it's in contravention of international convention. Please go away. Turn around and go back to where you came from." And Jameson reads this letter. Now, many years ago, when I lived in Salisbury in Rhodesia, under circumstances which I'm not quite sure now, I met a lady by the name of Miss Sheila Gibbs. Now, she was from the Scripture Gift Mission, and an old silver-haired lady with an infectious smile, and the sort of person you could never say no to. So she says to me, could you help me on Sunday mornings? I have a project and I need a little bit of help with it. Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose I can, I replied. Good, she said. It's up in Pioneer Street, and I don't want to go there alone. Ah, bodyguard for a little old lady. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, sure, I said. So here I am, 9:30 Sunday morning on my motorbike, and I stop on the corner of Manika Road and Pioneer Street. Now, if you go from that intersection toward Jameson Avenue, you will find some blocks of flats and some houses, and you'll also find the notorious Queen's Hotel there. And I won't say anything about that, because those of you who are familiar with that part of town will know all about that place. But if you go from that intersection that I've just mentioned and you go toward Charter Road, then you will find mostly sort of motor traders at that time, but not not the kind you would find in Angwa Street and Kingsway, you know, Union Avenue in that area, Pusey and Payne, Pusey and Diz, all the big Chevrolet agencies and that. No, 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 no. These guys here in Pioneer Street were, you know, and forgive me if you had a business like that or if you worked for one. It's the kind of place where they would work on your car in the street, and after you collected it and drove off with it, there'd be a pile of nuts and bolts lying underneath it, and a pile of oil on the pool of oil on the tar. You know what I mean. But there were also some very significant businesses along that road. Stansfield Ratcliffe, I think, were there. Diesel Electric, yeah. Panasonic, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken on that one. And of course, as you got to Charter Road, you'd find the very famous TT motorcycles, which to me, of course, was the most significant of all the businesses along that road. But now it's Sunday morning, everything's closed. Okay, so I'm on my bike. Here comes Miss Sheila Gibbs in her little motor car, and she climbs out, and she's happy to see me, and she's got a great big bag over her shoulder, and now we walk down the road. And there are a few houses there, okay, not many, but there are a few. And we stop outside the first one. Hello, hello, she calls, and a lady comes out. Good morning, are there any children here? So the lady looks at her and she says, yes. And she says, I'm starting a Sunday school. Would your children like to come? And quick as a flash, the lady calls 2 girls and a boy, and she says, go with the auntie. So now we proceed to the next house. Hey, this is Rhodesia. Nobody's going to do anything bad to your kids. I mean, everybody knows that. It wasn't that kind of a world then. So now we go from house to house, and this little group of children gets bigger and bigger. And eventually, Miss Gibbs is now happy, and we stop under a tree, and everybody sits down, and she talks to them. She teaches them a few little songs, and they sing along and clap their hands, and she's got a Bible story for them, and we say a little prayer in that, and everybody, I think, is having a great time on a Sunday morning. So she says goodbye to the children and reminds them that she'll be back next week, and they must tell all their friends and come along, and each one gets a little gift as they go. I don't know what it was, a lollipop or something. And so that was a little project. She wanted to start something there for these people. Now we walk back to the car, okay, and to where my motorbike is parked. And we come to the Masonic Hall. Now this is an old building And it's got a date above the doorway, 18 something. And I mean, that to me seemed really, really old. And she says, do you know, we need to have a place, in case it rains, a place where the kids can take shelter when we talk to them. Yeah, okay. She said, see if you can open the door in this building. I'd like to look inside. So I said, well, you know, it's probably locked. She said, no, it looks abandoned to me. See if you can open the door. So I push against the door, and lo and behold, the door opens. I don't think anybody's been in there for decades. As I talk to you, I can still picture this place, eh? So we go inside. It's dusty. There's nothing there. There's a wooden floor, and it sounds really hollow when you walk on it. And there's a wall at the far end with a door. And I walk down this hallway to the door, and I look inside, and it's not very wide. There's a room which runs the width of the hall, and there's a sink there and taps and that for water, but I didn't see if anything would work. And that's all. And then some windows down the side. So I walk back to Miss Gibbs there, and she says, this will do fine. I'll come early next Sunday, and I'll bring a couple of brooms with me, and we'll tidy it up a little bit, and I've got some folding chairs, and the children will be perfectly happy here. So I look at her and I say, Miss Gibbs, don't you think we should try and find out from whoever owns this if it's okay with them? So she looks at me and she gives me a reply, which if Rhodes had been there, he would have applauded her. If Jameson had been there, he'd have thrown his arms around her and given her a hug. She said to me, Martin, I have learned in life, if there is something important that must be done, you do it and you ask for permission afterwards. And this is precisely what was going on through Jameson's mind. That's what I would submit to you. He looked at this writer from Louis Botha, and he looked at the letter. Bear in mind, this man is thinking of fellow countrymen, women and children back there in Johannesburg who are living in fear, fleeing for their lives from the Boers. And this guy says, what you are doing is illegal. Turn around and go back. Not going to listen to that. Not in a million years. I don't need your permission to do what I think is right. And so he writes back to Botha, Dear Sir, I wish to acknowledge that I'm in receipt of you. And he writes all this long stuff out. You know, today we we don't communicate like that, which is a shame really, because I think we've lost something of our dignity and bearing, and maybe along with it integrity, by just hi, yeah, I'm sorry mate, go fly a kite, I'm not prepared to listen to you. But he writes in very polite terms that he is there at the invitation of the citizens of Johannesburg who have been denied certain rights, and he just feels that he's obligated to go and give them his protection. He's got no problem with anybody living in the Transvaal. He's not out there to make trouble. And he writes along these lines. You know, it reminded me so much of many years later during the Rhodesian Bush War. Remember when the Rhodesian Air Force bombed that terrorist base in Zambia?
The Soccer Tower, this is Green Leader. Tower, this is Green Leader. This is a message for the station commander at Mumbai from the Rhodesian Air Force. We are attacking the terrorist base at Westlands Farm at this time. This attack is against Rhodesian dissidents and not against Zambia. Rhodesia has no quarrel, repeat, no quarrel with Zambia or her security forces. We therefore ask you not to intervene or oppose our attack. However, we are orbiting your airfield at this time and are under orders to shoot down any Zambian Air Force aircraft which does not comply with this request and attempts to take off. Did you copy all that? Copied. Roger, thanks. Cheers.
And when I first heard it, to me it was, oh, shades of Dr. Jameson. It's almost like a leaf out of his book. That's how he would have addressed that man in the control tower. Yeah, so he declines to accept Botha's instructions, and the man is told to take the letter back. Now, about that time, Mr. Newton in Mafeking and the Bechuanaland police adjutant, Captain Walford, meet in the orderly room. Now they've got this instruction from the High Commissioner, Sir Hercules Robinson, that a rider must be sent on a fast horse to recall Jameson. And they're wondering now who is the best man for the job. And they decide on Sergeant James White. Now, I spoke about him also in the previous episode, and I said created a bit of a stir in the court when these raiders were tried by saying that because he was a married man, he didn't want to be seen in their company. He kind of got his words all tangled up and it didn't come out right. Well, he may not have been a very articulate man, but his superiors must have considered him a very able policeman. And in fact, the fact that Charlie Coventry seemed to have made an extra effort to get James White to join them makes me think that he was a man cut above the rest. So they call him into the orderly room and they say, Sergeant, we would like you to go after Dr. Jameson. Okay, we're going to give you a package. There are some dispatches inside which you must take to him. Are you willing to do that? So White says, yeah, I'll do that, but you're going to have to give me a pass, sir. Right on there what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, because if I'm captured, I don't want the Boers to think that I'm part of Jameson's column. Now that's fine, we'll give you a pass. And they do that. Then they give him this package. It's unaddressed, nothing is written on it, sealed, and they say, you take this, don't give it to Jameson, all right, give it to the colonel. Sergeant, do you understand? And he says yes. So he takes that and he gets on a horse and he sets out for the frontier. It's 12 miles away from where he is. He crosses the border in the late afternoon, and immediately on the other side he's arrested by 10 Boers, and they take him to a place called Morofo, and there is a Veldcoronet there, which is a sort of a military leader and a junior magistrate all kind of rolled into one. He's responsible for law and order in his little corner of the district. So they take him to Veldcoronet Low, and they say, we found this guy crossing the border. He's got a package here. He says he's after an armed incursion into the Transvaal, and he needs to give this to their leader. So Lowe listens to this, and I mean, he's got a problem on his hands now. And a very unwelcome problem too. "What's in here?" he must have said. To which White replied, "I don't know exactly, but I know if I give it to Dr. Jameson, it's supposed to tell him to turn around and leave your country." "But does it say that?" "I don't know. I was just given this package, and here's my pass." So now Lowe thinks, maybe it says that. Maybe the guy's telling me the truth. But if I keep him back here, and it turns out that this raid carries on and a lot of lives are lost, I could be held responsible because maybe I could have averted that. On the other hand, if I tamper with this thing and try and open it, the recipient, Dr. Jameson, will refuse to touch it. He'll say, "Oh, it's not, how do I know that what's inside here is authentic? Anything could have been substituted for this." So eventually he makes a decision. "All right," he says, "I'll let you go and deliver it. But it'll have to be under escort." And so he takes a number of Boers and he says to them, "You ride with this guy, okay? He's got a lot of distance to make up, but you stay with him until he reaches his objective. Okay, look after him. Don't let anything happen." So they all set off after Jameson, and they ride like the wind because Jameson is far ahead by now, and they've got to get to him. At the column, in the meantime, there's a sigh of relief because they have just passed a place called Lead Mines, and this was what was on Willoughby's mind all along. After that rider that had brought that letter from Botha had departed, he said to Jameson, we got to shake a leg, man. I know we haven't been wasting time, but up ahead is a place called Lead Mines, and there's a bad defile there. We could be ambushed there and really cut to pieces. We've got to get past that, and the Boers are onto us now. There's no question about it. I mean, the fact that we've had this letter from Louis Botha, they know all about us. So let's just get past that place, and then we can all breathe easy. And they did. They got past there. There was a commando sent after them, but they arrived there too late, so no ambush took place. And then toward evening they got to MacArthur's store, and that was a very welcome stop for everybody. They could eat and they could rest. Perhaps I should say you could eat or you could rest, but you couldn't do both because the stop was too short, and the men were so weary. It's just a question of pulling the saddle off, making sure the horse had some fodder, and then most of the men just flopped on their backs and went to sleep from sheer tiredness. If you still took the time to prepare a meal for yourself, by the time you'd eaten it, it would be saddles up, let's go. So as soon as they had had their break, it was time to move on, and they did that, not knowing that coming up fast on their heels was Sergeant James White. I think my voice is really going. I think we'll have to stop here. I feel a bit like Gary Strong did many years ago. We were shooting a film of him in a studio. Barney Helsinger was the man who did the production, and if you had anything to do with music in Rhodesia, you'd probably remember Barney's name. A great guy. And Gary turned to me very late in the evening and he said, "Martin, I can't go on anymore. I'm just a tired old man." That's how I feel right now. But let me leave you with this thought. Francis Newton, the commissioner in Bechuanaland, he stood there with the adjutant, gave Sergeant White that package, and you gotta love Newton. butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. In the meantime, he was supposed to have been on that raid. He spoke about it and he joked about it and he said, yeah, I'm coming with you guys. He knew all about it. And whenever he met any of Jameson's officers, he would speak to them like in code and say, when are we going to the races? In other words, when are we leaving for Johannesburg? But at the last minute, he pulled out. I suppose he must have thought, there's going to be big trouble if I'm caught on this expedition. But he knew all about it, eh? Now, the question is this. What do you think? If he knew about it, did his boss, that is the High Commissioner in Cape Town, Sir Hercules Robinson, did he know about it? How much do you think Newton would have told him? And if Robinson knew about it, how much do you think the Colonial Secretary, Joseph Chamberlain, back in London, knew about it? I'll leave you with that thought. But folks, keep well. Thank you again for your loyalty and your faithfulness, your support. I truly value it. Really, I do. I don't want to sound like someone who just repeats something all the time, the same old thing. Thank you, thank you. But I really mean it. I honestly, with all sincerity, thank you for your generosity and your kind thoughts. So folks, keep well, take care, and God bless you until we are together again. Cheers.